It's June 2nd, 2022, and this is the Backdrop Weekly Developer Meeting. We get together every week to talk about challenges and problems facing Backdrop development. We'll do some introductions here. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, calling from Oakland, California. And let's go to Robert and then Jen.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California.
Thanks, Robert. Jen and then Tim.
Jen Lampton joining from Oakland, California, and I hope to have a new release for the Google Analytics module out by the end of the day for version 4 support.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Tim and then Justin.
I'm Tim Merrickson, St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota. And I am really excited to get an update to the Google Analytics module because I've had clients asking about it this week. So thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Tim. Justin and then Alejandro.
Yes, I Justin Christofferson in Denver, Colorado. Help out with the back infrastructure.
Excellent. Thanks, Justin. And Alejandro.
I'm Alejandro Krumaski in Westminster, Colorado, RG Piano Online.
Great. Yeah, you guys are almost neighbors. All right. Great. Welcome, everyone. First, we'll do a little community and contribution updates. Jen has the latest on those items.
Sure. So we have a handful of new modules out in the last week. It's pretty interesting. Organic groups and organic group subgroups, probably the most exciting ones. Those of you who got our newsletter probably heard about those there. But we also have taxonomy menu trails and 2 recipes, welcome recipe and user recipe, as well as barcodes, which actually came out last Thursday, but I don't remember if we mentioned it or not last Thursday. So I figured I'd just mention it again today.
Yeah, excellent. So organic groups has an official release. Is that what this means?
I think it's a beta.
Yeah, beta.
Well, beta, but an official release. That's excellent.
Yes, it's on backdrop.org now. You can download it through the project installer.
Fantastic. Okay, excellent. Let's see. We have a forum post where we solicit questions asynchronously throughout the week. There was only one post to the forum about topics to discuss from BW Panda. It's mostly around issue 5637. I'm not familiar with this one, but Tim, I think, checked in on it before we started. Could you
I
recap
did too.
that? Okay,
Sure.
go ahead, guys.
I think I triggered this discussion because I posted in the forum. I was looking for if there was a command line tool to lay out a module. Like I think in Drupal, the Drupal console did that for a while. You could just type a command and it would spin up a dev module for you. I don't know if Grush did that for Drupal. And I asked the question, and I think that got Peter looking around for templates. If you want to say something about it, Jen, go ahead.
Sure. So the answer to that question is I don't know if there's a command line tool that does that, but if you're trying to make a project from
Right.
GitHub has a button push that'll do that for you.
Right.
And so we have 3 projects set up right now as templates in GitHub, where if you go to create a new project, it's like, do you want to copy module, theme, or layout? And it'll let you create one of those 3 things based on a previous reference. But before I set up the GitHub project templates through GitHub, BW Panda had already set up templates in a different group, in the Backdrop Ops group, that weren't actually hooked up to Contrib, and I didn't see those. And so I think I thought I'd heard of them before, but then I couldn't find them because I was looking in Contrib. So we both did the same work in different places. And so now we're at a situation where we've got very similar projects in 2 different locations, and BW Panda's like, we need to clean up this mess, which is true. I don't really have any particular preference to which ones we use. I do want to have them hooked up to the GitHub button push template system, but I would like to not lose any work that was done in any one place than in the other. So yeah, he said, which ones do we move forward with, and is there what are the next steps here? And I think next steps are just somebody sitting down and figuring out how to consolidate the two and make sure they remain hooked up in GitHub. So,
Can I ask a clarifying question, which is the button push? Does that just mean that it like creates a fork of the
no,
repo?
it creates a brand new repository containing all of the code from the template.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
So, and then if you were to like clone that to your local, you would essentially have a functioning module, but it,
But if I
have to go
push,
through and remove.
do I have to be a member of the contrib group or something, or does it do it to my own account?
You have to create the project in the contrib group. So you would hit like
Okay.
new project, and then it would
Got
let you choose from the available templates.
Yeah,
Got it.
looks like it lets you do both. This is cool. I didn't know you could do this. Sorry, I'm hijacking the screen share here. So when you hit new under here under backdrop contrib, you can choose a template, like I want to make a module, and then you can choose like if you want to put it under your repository or
Nice.
under, and you got to like choose like the whole thing, like my new module, which is crazy. So this would duplicate the entire repository, which sounds great. It's like copy paste the whole repo.
Yeah.
This is good enough for me. It satisfies what I was looking for when I was looking for, and I didn't know about this. So.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have Chris Brown. It's an actual singer's name, but
I just took a generic first and last name and stuck them together. We tried to be gender non-specific and alphabetically.
yeah. Well, anyway, one of the questions I have here, Jen, is that that GitHub template ability, does that have to be within the same group?
It did
In
when I
order for that to
created
work?
it. I don't know if that's still the case.
Like, yeah, it sounds like it's already changed since we set this up, possibly. That maybe now we could reference anything, in which case we can move it someplace else. If
Yeah.
it's possible to put it somewhere else, then great. We actually have options to discuss here. And if that's the case, I feel it should be under Backdrop Ops because
That's
it's
where
not.
BW Panda created them in the first place because it makes more sense to have them there.
Yeah, because these
Yeah.
aren't real contrib projects. They're just
Right.
templates, so they
Yeah.
shouldn't be in the group.
Yeah, I think when I created it, they had to be in the groups. That's why I put them there. But I don't know if that's still the case. So yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
So the solution then is if we can leave them in ops, we leave them there with the push button. If the push button doesn't work that way, then we leave them where they are in contrib.
Well, there's also still stuff in ops that's not in contrib and stuff in contribs that's not in
Right.
ops.
So we also have-
do still need to do the consolidation piece too.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling that BW Panda was willing to work on this. He just wanted to know some input on which way to go. So that should be helpful.
Yeah, I think we don't have to do the testing on the Backdrop contrib group. One thing anybody can do is they can, set up their own. They can test it with their own GitHub account. I think, if assuming that this isn't group specific, like Backdrop contrib is an organization, not an individual, and I'm not sure if that changes what kind of options you have. But I guess we also could just find GitHub's documentation. Hopefully they have some. Sometimes it can be hard to find. Okay, but yes, Tim, you got it right. If we can use Backdrop Ops, that would be preferable for everybody. I think it's just a matter of technical limitation. But we've been stuck in this situation several times before, where we start using GitHub tools before they're really mature, and then we get stuck using them the old way. So it definitely would be preferable if we could get off of this as soon as possible, if that capability does exist. Because that's how we ended up with like backdrop issues versus backdrop, for example.
Actually, just based on what you just showed us, it's like it looked to me like you were able to clone them into whatever group you were a member of. So so that certainly implies that we could set them up anywhere, and that if I'm a member of
because he was
contrib,
clicking them from the contrib group add repository button, and so I think that's where it comes from.
right?
But I'll look into the settings on that
Sure.
group and see if it lets we reference something from somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay, well, it looked to me like it was doing that for me, but you can, yeah, go ahead, look at it.
Cool. Okay, great. Let's see. I'll mention this one first. Alejandro brought up this issue that Doc Wilmot and he have been working on, issue 5482, the layout relationship plugin, layout relationship author from node, passes the wrong context data. And this issue's been open for quite a while. That's effectively our relationship for user author or node author isn't working correctly. I appreciate the back and forth that you've been having with Doc Wilmot here. But as far as like getting additional feedback, this is going to take some looking at, I think, to provide anything valuable. So I can't really comment on it here and now. But this is critical because it's basically, getting user properties from the node or about the author, like the user's picture who created the node, doesn't work correctly. So this is really important.
Right, and if I may add, it's not only the user, organic groups also uses some relationships that we can't use because of this bug, basically. So it's blocking that too.
Excellent. I mean, excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. It's not excellent. Yeah, great. Okay. Well, anyway, 5482 needs some additional thoughts and help. Alejandro, thanks so much for jumping in there and helping Doc Wilmot on that. I'll try to give it a look too. Okay. And we talked about this one before the meeting started. It kind of postponed the meeting a bit. There's an issue for 123 that is issue 5632, providing the ability to disable entity caching. I'm trying to think of when we introduced entity caching. Was it like 120 or something like that? It's been a couple of releases now that we've had caching at the load level per entity type. And issue 5632 proposes an interface with the ability to disable it per bundle type. So basically like per node type, or I guess per node type being the most typical example. Anyway, we discussed it a lot before the meeting, and we haven't really landed on something yet. This is like a conflict between like, oh, well, the modules should be written in a way where they're not modifying properties on the node directly because it breaks caching. But then there's also our longstanding like backwards compatibility is important policy, which is policy number 1. And so we may need to find a way to make it work, even if it's not ideal. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on this so far. I think that 5632 currently introduces a user interface for disabling per bundle type, and I think, oh, it doesn't? Am I just making? Oh, okay. Well, great. Sorry.
But to go, there's a contrib module. I wrote a contrib module to give a user interface if you wanted to manually do that.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. Okay. But anyway, that sits kind of in a good place then, I think. That sounds perfect. Yeah, but in the meantime, there's other things, and I think Jen raised a point to something with filtering. That filtering is a little bit weird right now because text module, the module that provides like text fields and the anything that has rich text editors enabled on it, caches the filtering at load time, not at render time, which is done for performance reasons, but it also just causes all kinds of confusion and bugs and all kinds of weird things because it really doesn't behave the way in which people expect. It also ends up putting those property, like the cached text, into the cache of the object when it shouldn't be there. So yeah, it looks like Jen has a sub issue here, or a related issue, 5642. Did you just create this, Jen?
Yeah, I copied it from the outstanding Drupal.org issue that I've been working on, and there's also in the Drupal issue, there's a link to the decision made early in Drupal 7 where they're like, let's just move all of the filtering to the load phase because it makes Drupal faster. And nobody like stopped to think about the potential repercussions of that. And that was because Drupal 7 was so much slower than Drupal 6. They found this performance improvement and jumped on it. But in that comment thread, I think it was Wyched said that the load phase is not meant for pulling things from the database. So there might be some confusion around what load does for different developers, which could be why some people are using load for manipulating and some people are using load for pulling from the database. So just in Drupal, nobody knew what load did, and so everybody did different things. So now if we're making assumptions about what we think load does, and everyone in Contribus does something differently because it was never clear initially, that could be part of our problem, and would also be something for us to like, if we do want to set some clear lines around that, we better do a really good job about documenting and helping everybody figure out how things are supposed to work.
Yeah, I mean, we could double. I'm hesitant to even suggest this, but if we wanted to maintain the current kind of behavior where there's certain properties that are dynamic, that aren't cached, we could add a whole nother phase, post load or something like that. It's like after the load is done, it then
we have a
caches the
prepare.
load, but then we have a post load that is like modify after it's been loaded.
Well, we have a couple of those already.
I know. There's also, yeah, exactly. I think that there's something like there's like a node alter, for example, but it's like, when does the altering happen,
And there's like a prepare and there's like a render. So it like really depends on when do you need the thing? Because it wasn't in the database and it has to happen before you need it. But like if there isn't another layer between when you need it and when it was pulled, then we're stuck.
Yeah, but the thing is, previously we didn't have this caching layer, so doing stuff at load time was fine because you could count on load always being called. Now that there's a cache there, the load operation could get skipped, or it would be different depending on the state of other things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've made new problems by adding cache layer, which of course is the way that adding cache layers goes.
Same thing that happened in Drupal 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a new problem.
Yeah. Well, anyway, issue 5642, takes a pretty like middle of the road approach that it kind of allows modules to make things work the way that they used to if they need it, which by disabling the cache, which for the time being seems like that's pretty good compromise. Robert, is there anything more you want to talk about on that? This is your issue, and I totally just like blazed through it all this time around.
Since I think you said the current PR is okay, I'm good.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to post a comment that says, in writing what we've discussed now and before the meeting, because I think that we should get that down.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the broader issues are leading to follow-up work that needs to be done to clean things up, but this will at least get things working.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All this does is modify something that we already have that allows more specific selection for disabling. I don't see anything new in here.
Yeah,
I'm just asking.
Oh, go ahead, Robert. You can answer better.
Look, yeah, well, so yeah, it adds RGPM just zooled to me. It adds lines that checks a new flag in the entity info bundle cache and uses that to decide whether to disable at the bundle level.
But yeah,
most of the code in the PR is actually testing, because we didn't even test for entity caching. So there's now tests for entity caching and disabling of entity caching and disabling of entity caching at the bundle level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's the same ability, but it's more granular now. It used to
Yeah.
only be at the
Yeah.
entity level. Now it's at the bundle level.
Looks like a really small change, generally speaking.
Yeah, the actual functional change is about 5 lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, great. Let's see. All right, let's run through the 123 release real quickly, the items that we can. I mostly want to talk about entity reference module issue 1301 that has been making some progress. Last week, we asked for more eyeballs, just checking on this issue overall because I thought it was ready to go. We got more eyeballs, which is fantastic. Indigo Zella came in, reviewed some things, found out there were some issues with views, and Alejandro, you jumped in as well and said that hey, there's some pull requests that are open that need to be addressed. So Herb, who's spearheading this whole operation, he made the changes in the contrib module, but it's difficult to actually just get those changes into the core pull request now because there's a whole slew of git commands that you have to do in order to get stuff into the pull request. So it's back in his court right now that he's working to get the pull request updated. I'm not sure if that actually fixes the views problems that Indigo Zella raised. Okay, so there could be other issues. Yeah, I'd like to hear what other people think about this sort of thing because it's like, I mean, like Indigo Zella pointed out that there's more than 4,500 lines of code, 4,500 lines of code, and there's bound to be issues like bugs like this. And what should we do about that? I mean, the bugs exist in the contrib version too, of course, yet hundreds of sites are using the contrib version. I don't think that we should gate everything, like, that the whole module has to be perfect to our understanding before we merge it in. But it would be good if we established if there's any kind of threshold for like how working it needs to be before we put it in, just to set expectations around where Herb should be putting his efforts if he needs to be you know putting in a serious amount of time into the contrib module before we put it into the core repository. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think entity reference is a pretty mature module. It has a set of tests already. I don't know a little bit about the history of Backdrop, but it seems to me that in the past you guys have actually incorporated tokens, for example, that was contrib into core, and I think we kept fixing things after that, even until recently in some of the tokens, but that didn't impede the merging into core. So I would support merging entity reference into code, even if there are a few bugs here and there.
I think the point we talked a little bit about last week too was that the sooner we get it into core, the more people will be, the easier it is for people to sort of test it and I think and move progress forward, right? I was ready to go test entity core, entity reference in core, download that branch and do some testing with it. And now I feel like I should wait because there's this work going on in contrib. And, so sort of getting it into core would allow us to maybe deal with these issues quicker. So I would lean towards erring in that direction as long as it's pretty stable.
Yeah, I think there's a particular urgency for this one because unlike token module where there's only one token and it was like universally accepted as like the solution to a given problem, we've got this splitting that's happening between different solutions for references, and we need to clarify this, and by putting it in core, that will put one reference solution above the others, and therefore like really concentrate our efforts, I think, and clarify which direction we're heading. So I'm of the same opinion. I think putting this in sooner rather than later is beneficial. I don't know still like where these things should be. I kind of think like there's already Herb merged in two things, and if he can get his pull request updated, then fantastic. If he comes back later and says, I'm having a lot of difficulty figuring out how to do this,
Mhm.
then potentially we could merge as is and then do follow-ups if that's
Mhm.
simpler, because the current pull request is not a typical one because it maintains the entire contrib history from Drupal 7 from Backdrop, and so it's several hundred commits long, and like just tacking on one more commit could be trickier than it seems. then like if we merge now and then he just files another pull request that is just literally like just updating the stuff from contrib could be a lot easier.
Right.
So anyway, maybe that's what I'll say. I'll say something along those lines, that if it's difficult enough, then we could even follow up separately. But okay, sounds like we're all of the opinion sooner is better.
Yeah.
Jen's making a little face
Oh.
at that. No,
No,
okay,
I was
something
making
else.
a face at something else.
Okay.
The sooner it gets into core, the more people can do pull requests. Well, I guess that's not technically not true, but
I also think like we can put it in and leave it disabled by default for a while, and once we get it where
Sure.
we want it, we could enable it by default later, and it's totally a safe place to start.
Yeah, totally. That's I think Gregory frequently mentions like experimental modules, that this is effectively
Mhm.
by putting it in but not turning it on by default, it kind of is one of those. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's really great to see that issue 1301 moving forward. Let's see. We only have a couple minutes left, and these other issues, I don't think that there's been real big movement on. Tim, do you want to talk about hiding titles and comments at all? 4569.
Well, since you have to leave in 2 minutes, and really what I think I need is your feedback, maybe it's best to wait till next time.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah, we kind of have to wrap up here. Is there anything else that anyone would like to mention?
I'll just say on that last issue, Nate, if you have a chance to look at it and just sort of say, if either at least rule out either of the two approaches, that would be really helpful, because that's right now that the dilemma is two different approaches, and I don't even know if there legitimately are two approaches. Like one of them might not be possible, which would then simplify the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I think we talked about this last week actually,
Yeah.
and if it's still the same options, then yeah, I already know what they are.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think we heard your opinion yet. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining this week. Great discussions, great work moving forward a lot of these issues. There's a lot more, of course, than the ones that we discuss here. But yeah, I'm really happy to see all of the progress that's been happening and things moving forward. I know that there is a little bit of a slump on the committing side. I haven't been able to take a look at things, but yeah, the RTBC list is indeed growing, and I'll try to at least post some feedback to those items. Okay, well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much, and we'll see everybody